Ay, Chichi, llegó el profe otra vez. Hola chicos, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos a nuestra segunda parte de el presente. This time, we are going to talk about the present tense of verbs that end in ER and IR. So here is what we are going to talk about today. But first, I have a question for you. ¿Qué tú escribes y lees en la escuela todos los días? Let's see. So here's what we're going to talk about on this part 2 of the present tense. We are going to talk about briefly about when we use the present tense, which we saw on the first part of this video. The stem of verbs again. We're going to then talk about how do we form the present tense of AR and IR verbs. Then I'm going to provide you with some examples like I did in the other presentation. And lastly, I'm going to show you again those words that are associated with the present tense. So let's get to it right away. So again, we use the present tense to talk about present or current situations, talk about habitual or repeated actions. We also use it to talk about activities that we normally do and to talk about facts, okay? Remember, you can always pause the video to slow it down a little bit. So again, the last time we were talking about how all verbs in Spanish end in either AR, ER, and IR, and the most of them end in AR. We also mentioned that for us to conjugate in the present tense, we have to drop the ending AR, ER, or IR before we conjugate, right? Before we add those new endings that form the present tense, okay? So once we drop the endings, we are left with what we call the stem, right? Remember those? This is my stem. Once I drop the ending AR, ER, IR, this is what I need for me to be able to form the present tense, okay? So let's see. So here we have a little different endings compared to the AR verbs. So how do I form the present tense of verbs when I have an ER verb or IR verb, right? So here's the thing, we use the same structure that we use for the other one, same way we did with the AR, we do with the ER and IR. So we're gonna drop the ending of the verb first, and once we drop the ending and we have that stem, then we're gonna add these new endings that are the ones that I need to form the present tense, okay? So for ERs, these are gonna be my new endings, o, es, e, hemos, en, when the verbs end in ER. And then I have o, es, e, hemos, and when with those verbs that end in IR. So did you notice something between the two of them? You notice some similarity? So if you notice the ER and IR new endings or the present tense endings are identical almost in every single one of the subjects, right? Almost every single ending is the same except for the nosotros. So when I talk about the present tense and I use the present tense and I'm including myself in the conversation, I'm gonna have to be careful with the nosotros form, because the nosotros form in this between these two changes slightly. It has a slightly change, which is only one letter. So keep that in mind. But other than that, it's the same thing. Look, o, es, e, en. The only different one is hemos and hemos. And it's only when I use the nosotros. So remember again, these endings are going to change depending on the person doing the action, right? So let's see how they look conjugated. So here we have two verbs. One of them ends in er, comer, to eat, and another one ends in ir, escribir, to write. Okay, so let's see one example with them conjugated. If you noticed, I dropped my er ending, and this is my stem, and this is the stem that I'm going to use for the rest of the conjugation, because this is a regular verb. I don't have to worry about the stem changing. So I'm going to be using the same stem every time. It doesn't matter what the subject is. I'm going to still use the same stem. The only thing that's going to change is the ending, depending on the person doing the action, right? For example, yo como, I eat. Tú comes, you eat. Él, ella, usted come. He or she or you, formal, eat. Nosotros comemos. Ustedes or ellos or ellas, you all, they eat. Okay? And then with the IR, yo escribo, tú escribes, él, ella, usted escribe, nosotros escribimos, ustedes or ellos or ellas escriben. Okay? Again, same exact conjugation, except for the nosotros. You see how it is underlined for you to be careful with. So let's see some examples now. Yo como en la escuela todos los días. I eat at school every day. ¿Tú comprendes a la profesora Rodríguez? Do you understand the teacher Rodríguez? Mariel a veces bebe agua en la mañana. Mariel sometimes drinks water in the morning. Nosotras corremos todos los domingos. Nosotras, including myself, corremos todos los domingos. Raúl y Julia, ellos siempre aprenden español en la clase. Okay. So notice how I'm using the ending according to the subject. See, O with yo, es with tú, e, because in this case it's er, with she with ella, hemos, and n. Okay, so let's see another example with ir now. Yo no vivo en Nueva York. Yo vivo en California. Tú nunca escribes en la pizarra. Isabel recibe mensajes de texto a menudo. Mi amigo y yo asistimos al partido de béisbol. Marta y Ana escriben en la sala de clases. Again, you notice that ending is according to the person doing the action. Tú, ¿sí? Ella, nosotros, hemos, ellos, and. Okay, so always keep that in mind, that the subject has to agree with the ending of the verb that you are putting there, the new ending. And again, these are the words associated with the present tense, like we saw in the first one. You can pause the video so you can see, write those down again. And for questions, again, you can write a comment down below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Ay, chichi. La vaca, mu, la vaca, mu, la vaca, la misma vaca.